I'm Diana Felsen with NewsNation. Psychic John Edwards' latest book, Chasing Evil, Shocking Crimes, Supernatural Forces, and an FBI's agent's search for hope and justice, is based on his unexpected and long term partnership with former FBI agent Robert Hilland. Together, the crime solving duo unlocked numerous murders and wrote this book. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
So, for those that are not familiar with your work, can you explain what you do as a psychic medium?
Sure. So this is my 40th year doing this, and for the last 40 years, four
Wow.
decades, I've been helping people, regular everyday people, connect with their loved ones and friends in the spirit world, or helping them through some of the difficult moments that they may be finding obstacles or blockages. Like, what are the lessons in their lives? Like, that's the crux of my work. I'm constantly on tour globally. That's what I do. But about 1998, my office received a phone call from an FBI agent who was originally a New Jersey cop, and he had heard me on local radio. I'd done a ton of local radio. I was like a staple on morning radio across the United States. And in this specific radio station was WPLJ, the Scott and Todd morning show that I
I
was on.
remember that
Yep,
show.
the
I'm from
big show.
Jersey.
Yep, I was on that show quite a bit. They were like my morning show family, and he took offense, and he was pretty adamant that this was all a setup and that this wasn't real. And maybe two or three times after hearing me, he decided that he was going to, you know, take action. He was going to come check me out and try to expose me, as, in his words, as a con and a fraud.
Wow. And obviously that's not what happened. You
No.
were you were hesitant, John, though, to help. What initially compelled you to help law enforcement, since you were reluctant at first and you did not want to be publicly you did not want it to be
Mm,
publicly known that you were helping?
correct. So my background is my dad was a New York City police officer and a career military guy, not a fan of the subject matter. My mom and my grandmother used to have, like, psychics come to the house, but I was forbidden to be around it. And it was something that I really wasn't interested in. And it was something that was kind of like made fun of. Like, my
Yeah.
dad had made fun of it. So when I got involved with the subject matter, which is a long story, but I had a reading that kind of put me on my path. I basically went to go debunk one of the people that they had doing
Mm.
readings. So I get the whole where Bob was coming from, because I kind of was him when I was 15. But he came and he asked for assistance, and my assistant at the time was pretty adamant, like, we're gonna get him in.
Mm.
So she got him in, and I said, listen, this is not something that I do. My dad actually said, make sure you never work with the cops. Like,
Hmm.
make sure you don't besmirch my name, and make sure I don't find out that you're working with the police. So I've always had a very, very healthy respect for law enforcement, for the uniform, for how they're out there trying to protect us. Like, so to me, it was like, yeah, no worries, no biggie. But when Bob came in, it shifted everything. And he said, is this something you can do? And I was like, listen, here's how I work. Have you ever worked with the psychic before? He was, stone cold, no expressions. He was like, no. And he brought me evidence, like evidence
Mhm.
bags. And there were like 9 bags, I believe, he put in front of me, 5 of which had to do with the case of a missing woman.
Mhm.
And 4 of those evidence bags, I believe, were from items he asked people in his office. Hey, can I borrow this? Can I borrow that? And that was his kind of like, his control items. He wanted to just check and see,
His
like,
testing you.
yeah, he was testing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the initial case that he came to me with. And I was able to assist him with information that day,
Mhm.
got his attention. And I wound up reading for him. And, I wound up bringing through information about his family that he did not know about.
Wow.
So as a result of him having to go get that validated and confirmed from his parents, it kind of was like his world shifted. And I get it. My world shifted when I had my first reading. So
Mhm.
when you are confronted with, if you are an analytical person and you are confronted with facts and data that not logical, like, how would you know that? It becomes something you want to dig deeper in. And that's what happened. He wound up digging deeper, and I wound up helping him to dig deeper.
John, when you talked about the victims' items and the control group, that was one of the most compelling scenes starting out in the book because you were given, like you said, the control items, and then you were given the items of a victim. Again, you didn't know whose was whose,
Correct.
but during that, I would say, reading, you were able to piece together exactly what happened to her, where she was, and it was all very fast. When you are going through those items, can you just walk us through what you're feeling? What are you seeing? Do you
Sure.
see it through the perspective of the victim?
So I was not making a connection with the person who had crossed over. What I was doing is I was actually feeling the energy of the articles that Robert Hilland brought to me. He's the co-author of the book Chasing Evil. And one of the things that I did was called psychometry. And there's two different types of psychometry. Psychometry is something where you're reading the energy of the object. And there's objective psychometry and subjective psychometry. So I was doing subjective psychometry. I was reading the energy of the person who the objects belong to. So it's one of the reasons why, if anybody's watching this right now and you're thinking about going for a reading with a medium, don't give the medium a photo of a person who's passed, and don't give the medium anything that belonged to the person who passed, because they could actually read the energy of the person and not make a connection with them. So, um,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Okay.
so that's just a little teaching nugget. But I was doing subjective psychometry. Like I was kind of like, placing my hands over the items, and I was able to say, like, these right here, these control items that he brought. I'm like, this has nothing to do with your case. And then I just go into what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and feeling. And every time I do a reading, it doesn't matter if it was 10 years ago or tomorrow. Um, it really depends upon the energy, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes the energy's flowing faster, and sometimes it's kind of not as fast. And then I describe whatever it is that I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and what I'm feeling, kind of like having a daydream. Or
Mhm.
if anybody's had a very kind of prolific dream and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I had the weirdest dream. And you remember these fragments of it. It's these fragments of concepts, fragments of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. And then I interpret it in my frame of reference, because I'm the person who's
Mhm.
seeing what I'm seeing. What does it mean for me? And that's what I did. I just kind of gave them the information.
Once you get these flashes of information, does it stay with you? Do you connect again with the victim, or are you able to compartmentalize and go on with your day and, just be a regular person in the world?
No, I'm pretty normal. As normal as you can be talking to dead people, right?
Right.
I don't I compartmentalizing is definitely something that I can do. And when you look at my astrological chart, any astrologer looks at it and goes, "Oh, that's how you can do what you do." It's very, very obvious within my actual chart where you can see how I can kind of like detach and disconnect. But these
Okay.
are like borrowed thoughts. One day I'm going to write a book that's going to be called Borrowed Thoughts, because I feel like I am borrowing the thoughts. When I'm doing a reading for somebody, if I'm making a connection with somebody who's passed, they're not my thoughts. They're like the energy and thoughts of the person that I'm connecting with. So they kind of come in and then I pass it on like a waiter, right?
Mhm.
So it's like I take the order, I pass the order on. Unless this was a return client that I'm seeing every single day. Like, for
Mhm.
example, when I was a teenager, I worked at a deli on Long Island, like as many people would growing up here. And you get your regulars and they come in and like, okay, this person's gonna get, bologna on a buttered roll. And you have that ready for that person because that's what their order is.
Mhm.
But if I have a brand new client that comes into the deli and that client orders something, I make the order, I hand it to them, they leave. I'm not gonna remember that. So because my clients are mostly that, where I
Mhm.
see them and then I don't see them again, or I see so many people, I'm not gonna remember them. So I call them borrowed thoughts.
It's very interesting. How did working closely with the FBI on some of the most heinous crimes affect your perspective on justice and healing?
That is a question, Diana. That is a question that I've been doing a lot of interviews and nobody's actually asked me that question. And it's a really, really good question
Well,
because,
thank you.
yeah, it's a really, really good question because um, I feel like the justice system of our world globally pales to the justice system of the universe. And I know that many people that are, watching true crime shows may feel like justice doesn't prevail and that people don't get their due. But I kind of feel like it happens in a different way than maybe we just may want it to. And I
Mhm.
know that there's a level of frustration when people read the book. You're going to see what I mean by this, especially specifically at the end.
Yeah.
But like there's a moment I think that all of us will see something and say, that's really unfair. That's really unjust. And I'm a Libra. Libras want justice and balance. Like that's what our sign is. It's the scales, right?
Mhm.
So it is a little bit frustrating. It is a little bit frustrating when you see certain things. But what I do is I surrender my knowing that nothing happens in the universe without it being balanced out on some level. and we may not always get to see it. We may not always get to, you know, revel in it.
Mhm.
And I have a Scorpio rising, and my Scorpio rising wants to see it. Like I want to see it.
Yeah.
I make a joke often saying that when I get to the afterlife, if there are jobs, I'm applying for, like, you know, the karma department.
It's you just took the word out of my head because I was literally thinking karma. You wanna
Yeah.
see that the karma comes back, right? That there's,
Yeah.
like,
I'm gonna
an
be like,
end.
how do we speed this up here?
Well, the name of the book is Chasing Evil,
Hmm.
and we know that the battle between good and evil has been alive since the beginning of time. The United States is living through highly inflammatory, violent times.
Oh,
Can you
I haven't noticed.
Yeah, right. I
It's,
mean, it seems like it's ramping up every day. There's just something that is more shocking, it seems, and yet I think America is almost feeling like a universal stress from this. I don't even think it's a numbing anymore. I think a lot of people are on high gear and are highly alert and are scared. Um, Not to put you on the spot, and this is really just based on maybe some feelings you've
sure.
had, but can you predict is a hard word, if the United States will continue to see an increase in violent acts? If so, what kinds? And is there any way that
Sure.
these acts can be avoided?
Yes, I think if people, so one of the things that I encourage people when I'm touring, right? When
Mhm,
I'm on the road and I'm touring, I will open my events by asking everybody to be skeptical. I will ask them to be open-minded and objective, but I'm going to ask them to be skeptical. And above and beyond that, I'm going to say, in the world that we're currently living in, we have to be a critical thinker. And I said, I know you guys bought a ticket. You're sitting in front of me. You want me to read for you. You've suspended your disbelief, or you trust me, whatever that is. And I thank you for sitting in front of me. But I'm going to ask you to be a critical thinker right now. I'm going to ask you to be skeptical. I'm going to ask you to listen to what I'm saying. Because if I can get you to do it with me in the next 2 hours, then hopefully I'm going to be able to get you to do it in the
mhm.
2 hours after that when you're watching the news. No disrespect to NewsNation or any other news organization out there, but
Right.
I'm very, very clear that everybody has a bias. And every organization, including documentaries, are
Mhm,
legitimately biased. I just did a whole live on Evolve Plus TV for this, where I talk about people's biases. So we have to start within the framework of understanding, what are you consuming and what are you watching? What are you consuming and what are you watching? And if you're going to watch something that's left wing, then you have to
mhm,
balance it by watching something that's right wing. And one of the things that I think we have to do is look for where we're actually getting information from, because there's a lot of, and I think I'm going to use this term correctly, but I think there's a lot of stochastic
mhm,
terrorism that's happening. You might want to just like look that up and make sure I'm saying that correctly and that I'm using the right term.
mhm,
But it's basically where people are using inflammatory words to create actions, deeds, and things, kind of like January 6th,
mhm,
where masses of people kind of are doing things for the what they perceive as the greater good, right?
mhm,
So when someone is doing something that is abhorrent, I sit back and I just go like, I really hope that they believe that what they're doing is for the right reasons and they're just not like negative evil people. But I know that there are negative evil people because that is one of the things that I've witnessed and watched. So do I think that there's going to be an uptick? I do. Do I
wow.
think that we can stop it? Yes, I think that we have to be vigilant. You know, I tell my kids, like, be aware. Now, maybe this because I'm a cop's kid. You know, like I grew up, you know, having to pay attention to, don't give out your phone number. Don't tell anybody where we
Mhm,
live. Your dad's on the job. We have to be aware of your surroundings. Where are your exits? Make sure you're sitting with your back against the wall. Make sure you know where you, like, as a kid, like before there was even a need for me to think like that, I was thinking like that.
yeah.
So I
Not a
have,
bad way to be. I
yeah,
mean, honestly.
I have a vigilant mindset that I've kind of imparted, you know, to my kids. It's like, sure, you're going to be on the train going into the city. Well, that's great. Well, make sure that your AirPods are on transparent, not noise canceling, because I want you to be aware of what's around you and who's
Mhm,
around you, and take, you know, take assessment. So like logical, smart things I would tell people to do, but it really does start with being a critical thinker and listening to what people are saying. And the litmus test that I have been using now for probably about a decade, but in the last 18 months to 2 years, even more so, is if you want to know if something's good, right? If you want to know if something's positive for the universe, for the community, is it good for humanity or not?
Mhm.
That is the simplest litmus test. Is it good for humanity or not? If we're infringing on somebody else's free will or their rights, that's bad.
Mhm.
I don't care if it's religion or politics or the cafeteria at the elementary school. If we're infringing upon somebody else's humanity, then that's bad. And by the way, the universe is going to recognize that and they're going to record that as a negative in your column. So I don't, I just sit back and just go like, you do you, but like there's a boomerang in the universe. Like what goes out as a pebble comes back as a boulder.
Is there anything specifically that is making you nervous, uncomfortable that could be upcoming, or you prefer not to put that out there?
I'm concerned about inflammatory words trying
Mhm.
to rile the masses to achieve a result that would be harmful to other people. When we live in a country where, I remember when September 11th happened. I was on Larry King the night before September 11th happened. So September 10th, 2001, I was in LA. I didn't want to be in LA. And anybody who knows my backstory and knows my connection to September 11th, they know that I
Mhm.
did not want to be flying out to LA. They knew I was like in this really like negative spot beforehand. And then I did Larry King Live. And after I did the show, I remember having this like weight lifted off me. And then the next day, September 11th happened and our country was
Mhm.
plunged into darkness. But you know what also happened? I had to drive across country to pick up my wife. She was in Cincinnati. Her plane was she was coming to meet me in LA, and she
Mhm.
was grounded in Ohio. So I nothing was flying. So I rented a minivan, and some folks from Crossing Over and I were driving across the country to go pick her up. And you know what I witnessed driving across the United States? Unity.
Hmm.
I recognized humanity. I recognized patriotism, and we were just one country who was attacked. So my concern is that there's such niche circles of belief right now
Mhm.
that it's no different than, churches fighting over my God's better than your God. Like
Yeah.
it's silly at the most elementary base level. And it's bringing out some negativity in humanity. So
Mhm.
I'm concerned about events that are going to be like that are going to put people in a position of harm that are organized. So
Mhm.
organized attacks rather than just sporadic. Hate and hate mongering against another organization. Like in the smallest way possible, I've been attacked my entire career. I have an entire episode of South Park dedicated to me. I can't escape it. It's there every single day. But being the biggest douche of the universe on South Park is very, very different than somebody having a religious view that's being attacked, where somebody might want to attack you for that. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a difference between having criticism, having free speech, and be able to speak proactively, politely, versus, like you said, hate speech, inflammatory speech that can influence if someone wants to play God and hurt another human being. It's interesting that you just mentioned. It makes me think you're really, really good, John. I was going to ask you how you handle skeptics who challenge your abilities.
I think it's important to be skeptical. I
Mhm.
think there's a difference between skepticism and cynicism. So skepticism says, I'm not sure, show me. And let's look at evidence and validation, which is why I went to the University of Arizona, 2 decades ago and went through a series of double blind studies because I wanted to, be able to have that and say, I did that. And if you want to look for research and data where they're ruling out, reading body language and facial cues and verbal intonation and mind reading and all of that,
Yeah.
that's been done, right? By myself and other people. It's there. So if you're interested in that, you can go find that. That's the Afterlife Experience by Dr. Gary Schwartz from the University of Arizona. Um, but I think it's healthy to be skeptical. I think it's healthy. Listen, we're living at a time where you can open up TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, Facebook, whatever the other, things are out there. And I think on TikTok alone, over 200 cloned accounts. Okay. 200 cloned accounts where people will act like they're me and respond to people in my comments. I have a
Oh.
blue verified account, but people don't read, right?
Right.
Speaking of reading, if anybody's interested in getting this book, look at this cover. I'm going to tell you why. Look at this cover, because on Amazon right now, there have been at least four that I know of. Four accounts, four different books that are up there on Amazon that are not this book,
Wow.
but yet have somehow found a workaround. And apparently, this is the latest thing in publishing. So if you're looking to go buy a book, please make sure you're reading that it's the actual book,
Mhm.
because too many people have already been duped on Amazon, which, by the way, you can return that. And just be careful. So
Right. Have a discerning mind
have
and
a
make sure
discerning
not
mind.
to rush things. I think it's so
Read,
easy. Right. But
read.
we're so into like instant gratification and almost believing what we see because we have AI being our intelligence, right?
Mhm.
Think we don't have to think anymore. And like you just said, pay attention.
Pay
Pay
attention
attention.
and make sure that what you're grabbing is what you want, right? Whether
Mhm.
that be in the supermarket or whether that be in the pharmacy or whether that be in the bookstore. It's not so rampant, I think, in the bookstores, but it is rampant on Amazon, right? So
Mhm.
people are looking to scam you and make a quick buck. So do I
Yeah.
think being skeptical is important? Yes. Yes, I do. And by the way, any legitimate medium is going to want you to be skeptical because that means that you're listening. That means that you're thinking about what we're saying. But to be cynical, well, that just means that no matter what somebody says to you, somebody else has made up their mind for you. A couple of years ago, I was in Los Angeles, and I remember my event had to be delayed. And again, I tour all over the country,
Mhm.
and I was in Pasadena, I believe, and I was stuck in traffic, so I had to call the person running the event and say to them, "I'm so sorry, I think I'm going to be late." But before I had a chance to even say that, I was told, "I think we're gonna have to hold." I said, "Oh, yeah, no worries," 'cause then I wasn't gonna be late. I was like, "Why are we holding?" And they said, Don't worry about it. We'll tell you when you get here." I was like, "Why? What's going on?" So I made them tell me. I had protesters at my event.
Oh.
And so I said, "What do you have, like, somebody, like, handing out, like, skeptical pamphlets or something?" And they said, "No, this is, like, a pretty big protest. Like, they've got, like, 20, 30 people here. They've got, like, signs, they've got bullhorns, they've got LED lights, they've got, like, posters." And I got really, really quiet. And then she
Mhm.
said to me, "Should I not have told you that? Is that gonna mess you up for the event?" And I said, "No, I'm actually feeling kind of relevant at the moment." I was like, "I haven't really done any type of press or media." I was like, "And that sounds like a very well organized kind of protest. Let's send them pizza." And she was like, "Are you out of your mind right now? Are you out of your mind?" She's like, "They are driving us crazy." I'm like, "They're harassing people?" And she's like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, they're harassing people." I was like, "Well, that's not cool.
That's not cool.
That's not cool."
That's
I was like, I was gonna send them pizza, but they're harassing people.
yeah.
So when I
No
did the
pepperoni for them.
no pepperoni. When I did the event, I said, I only wish the people that were protesting outside would sit in a room and literally watch what we're doing here and listen to the Q&A, watch the readings happen and see the process unfold." So after the event, I was doing a VIP meet and greet, and a lady walks up and I was like, "Hey, thanks for being here." And she said, "You invited me." Now, if somebody says you invited me, that to me tells me that they maybe are from a radio station or that they're
Mhm.
from a journalist like yourself. And then I was like, "Hey, why don't you come to the event?" So I didn't know who she was. I said, "Oh, what station are you with?" She said, "I'm with the people outside." And my brain, after an event, a little fried. And I was like, "The people outside? What magazine is that?" Like, and the photographer that was taking the photos was the person who ran the event, and she looked at me like, "No, like, the people outside." I went, "Oh, you're with the protesters?" And she
Mhm.
went, "I am." I was like, "Oh my god, that's so great." I got excited. I pulled her in for the photo, and then I said, "Would it be possible for me to interview you on Evolve Plus?" And she said, and this was the scary part, "No, I'm not trained enough yet." And I said,
What?
Train." I said, "I'm sorry, I don't know what that even means." I go, "What do you mean you're not trained enough?" She goes, "I'm not trained enough as a skeptic or part of the skeptical society for media. I wouldn't know how to handle it. Can I get somebody else to do it?" And I went, "No, I wanted somebody who was skeptical, protesting, who sat through the event to have a conversation with me about what you experienced, like your own perspective. And she said, "No, I'm not trained enough yet." And then she kind of like sheepishly like scurried away.
That's
And
so.
I looked at Katrina and I went, that scares me because
Mhm.
that's somebody who surrendered their ability to think for themselves.
Yep.
That's
Groupthink.
somebody
Yep.
that's somebody who would blow up an abortion clinic. That's
Mhm.
somebody who would do something, like I said, I think it's
Mhm.
stochastic terrorism, where people's words are used to infiltrate or affect negative change on other groups of people, affecting their humanity.
Before we have to let you go, I want to go into one case that's featured in the book, about the disappearance, and I know this one was, very close to you and to Bob, is the disappearance of a 5-year-old little boy, Noah Thompson. Can you kind of explain that without giving it all away? And I
Sure.
believe you even said at one point in the book, like, "Oh my god, he ran over him," like, meaning that the child was there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, most of the time, when Bob would call me, Bob would say, like, I've got this case and I get no information. This one specific time, I remember Bob calling me and, saying, like, this is about a missing boy. Now, missing boys can be live. Missing boys don't have to be passed.
Mhm.
I didn't get anything. Like, I didn't really get anything originally. And I said, "Bob, I'm really sorry. I'm not really seeing stuff." By the way, there's been many cases where Bob called me and I was like, "Dude, sorry. I've got nothing." And then there've been times where Bob called me and I got nothing on the case he asked me about, but I got information on a case he didn't ask me about.
Mm.
So we've had those moments. But I was away. And that night I landed at LaGuardia Airport here in New York. And all of a sudden, like at like 11 something, I was being bombarded with information about this case. And I said, You need to go out there right now." And he's like, "It's like midnight." He goes, I kind of can't go out there right now." I'm like, "You need to go out there right now."
Mm.
And that started this ticking clock about him going out there using the signs and symbols that I was seeing, um, which eventually led to him being discovered the next day.
Mm.
And it was pretty intense and really sad.
Yeah, no, terrible tragedy. And you and Bob have done amazing work
Thank
together,
you.
catching killers and, like you said, chasing evil, which is available now everywhere. And it's on the New York Times bestselling list. So congrats for that
Thank
too.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, we appreciate your time, John, and hope you'll come back.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. For more news you need to know, go to newsnationnow.com.